We've agreed you're no longer part of the family, my mom wrote. Don't come to any gatherings. My sister liked the message. I replied, thanks for confirming. I'll cancel all the auto payments. By 12:03, and the world I knew began to fade away. The sudden coldness of the words hit like a slap straight to the face. No warning, no hesitation, just a clean break. My own family, who I had spent years holding together, had erased me in seconds. It wasn't just the message, it was the realization that all my sacrifices, the years of paying bills, covering debts, and playing the role of the family's backbone had meant nothing. A small part of me wanted to fight, scream, maybe even beg, but instead I felt the most terrifying thing of all: nothing. A numb kind of peace settled over me as I clicked cancel on every auto payment. By morning, they'd be in the dark, but by then I'd already crossed a line I couldn't uncross. Before I share my story with you, I'd love to know you're here with me. Drop a simple hi in the comments so I know you're listening, or let me know where you're watching from. I love to see how far my story can reach. Thank you. And now, let me tell you everything. It was 11:58 p.m. when the text came through. I was sitting in my small apartment on the 12th floor of a building in Portland, Oregon. The rain was beating hard against the window, a constant rhythm like the world was trying to drown out my thoughts. The room around me was quiet, almost too quiet. The white glow of my laptop screen illuminated the space, a sharp contrast to the dark, rainy night outside. It was almost as if the world had paused, and I was left alone to take in the weight of what was about to happen. The message appeared on my phone, and the blood drained from my face as I read the words, "We've agreed you're no longer part of the family. Don't come to any gatherings." I sat frozen for a moment, letting the words sink in. I'd always known this day would come, but the cold finality of it still hit harder than I expected. It wasn't the first time my mom, Lydia Rush, had made a choice that left me feeling isolated. But this time it felt different. This time there was no room for negotiation, no pleading. Just a decision, an abrupt severing of all ties. In the span of a few seconds, Riley, my younger sister, liked the message. She didn't even wait for my response. She had made her stance clear. She was on their side, no hesitation. The betrayal stung more than the words themselves. I didn't reply right away. I let the silence hang between us for a while, like an unspoken truth we had both been too afraid to address for years. But then I couldn't stay silent anymore. I texted back, thanks for confirming. I'll cancel all the auto payments. That was it. The words were as cold as ice, but strangely, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just a numb sort of calm, as if I had already resigned myself to this moment long ago. At exactly 12:03 a.m. I opened my bank app. One by one I went through the automatic payments I had set up over the years for them: mortgages, bills, car insurance, Riley's tuition, medical expenses. It was all gone in an instant. I knew what would happen next. The electricity would be shut off in the morning. Riley's car wouldn't start. Their internet would stop working. I wasn't angry, but I knew that the world they'd built on my back was about to come crashing down. I sat there for a long time, staring at the darkened screen. The room felt emptier now, quieter. The rain outside no longer seemed like a soundtrack to my thoughts, it was just noise. And as the silence deepened around me, I realized something. This wasn't the end of something. This was the beginning of everything. I had spent years carrying the weight of this family, shouldering their debts, their expectations, their disappointments. But tonight I had finally taken control of my life. Tonight I was starting over, and the first step was to tell my story. To understand how I got to this point, how I became the emotional and financial anchor for people who didn't even see me. The morning after I sent that text, I found myself sitting at my kitchen table, a steaming cup of coffee in front of me, the harsh sunlight from the window making the room feel colder than it actually was. I opened an old notebook from 2010 and started flipping through the pages. As I sipped my coffee, I let my mind drift back to the years when everything started to fall apart. The years when I was forced to grow up faster than I should have. I was 16 when I first started working, taking on odd jobs just to help my mom pay bills. At 17, I lost my scholarship to college because my mom lied about my grades to the school. It wasn't the first time she had lied for me, but it was the first time I realized that she wasn't just lying to others, she was lying to me too. She had painted this picture of me as the family's protector, the one who could fix everything, but in reality, she had set me up to fail. Then came my 20s. Those years were a blur of debt loans and late-night calls from my mom. I remember the first time I had to pay off a tax bill for the family just so we wouldn't lose the house. I was barely making rent, but I sent the money without hesitation. My mom called me her guardian angel, and I believed her. I thought this was just what family did for each other. I thought I was being a good son. Riley, on the other hand, didn't seem to carry any of the weight I did. She partied, racked up credit card debt, and always needed help paying for something. She was my mom's golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I didn't mind helping her at first. After all, that's what brothers do, right? But after a few years of paying for her tuition, car insurance, and living expenses, I started to wonder if she even cared about me, or if she just saw me as another source of money. Maxime Ortiz, the only friend who ever really knew what I was going through, called me that morning after everything had settled. He was a lawyer, and we'd known each other since college. He was the only one who understood how deep this went, how much I had sacrificed without ever getting anything in return. "Are you okay?" he asked over the phone. "I don't know, Maxime," I replied. "I've spent my whole life paying for them, covering up their mistakes, fixing their problems. And now this, I don't even know who I am anymore." Maxime paused for a moment. "You've been through a lot, man. But you don't have to keep doing this. You could what I cut him off, feeling my frustration rise. Could walk away. Could finally say enough is enough. "You're right. I've had enough. I'm going to get everything back. I'll start by gathering all the records, every penny I've ever given them. Every bill, every late payment, every emergency that they made me fix. I'm going to take them down. They won't get away with this anymore." Maxim was quiet for a moment. "You know you could sue them for all this. You've got the proof, Cassian. You could make them pay." The idea hit me hard. It wasn't just about the money. It was about taking back my life. It was about showing them that they couldn't use me anymore. So I spent the rest of the day pulling up documents, organizing receipts, and compiling a list of every single transaction I had made on their behalf. I started with the easy ones: Riley's tuition, the insurance premiums, the medical bills. But then I started getting into the harder stuff: the money I'd sent to my mom to cover her mortgage payments, the credit card bills I had paid just to keep her from losing everything. And that's when I found it. A transaction from 4 years ago, $60,000 taken from my inheritance account. I stared at the screen, my blood running cold. I hadn't authorized this. I hadn't been told about it. And the signature on the transfer paperwork, it was my mother's, but it looked off. Something wasn't right. If they had forged my signature once, how many times had they done it before I needed to know? I had to confront them. But before I could make any more moves, I called Maxim back. "You need to see this," I told him. "It's bigger than I thought. I think they've been stealing from me for years." The drive back to Salem was eerily quiet. The highway stretched ahead, smooth and unbroken, but I felt a tight knot in my chest. I hadn't returned to this town in years, and as the familiar scenery passed by, it wasn't a feeling of nostalgia or a reunion with my past that hit me. It was fear. Fear of confronting what I had tried so hard to bury. Salem wasn't a place that felt like home anymore. It felt like a prison. And the past I had tried to escape. It was still here, lingering like a shadow that refused to fade. I pulled into the familiar driveway of the old house. The neighbors were still the same, standing across the street as they watched me pull up, their eyes filled with curiosity, maybe even pity. They knew the story, but not the real story. They only saw the facade my family had put up, the same one I had been forced to wear for years. Walking up to the front door, I felt a strange coldness, a disconnect from everything that used to define me. The house was empty, just like the hole in my chest. The memories came rushing back, the childhood I spent trying to fix the broken pieces of my family, trying to be the one who held everything together. But it had never been enough. I wasn't enough. Inside, everything seemed preserved, like it had been left untouched for years. My old room was still the same, but empty. The walls that once felt like home now felt like a tomb. It was as if my family had erased all traces of me. but there was something that hadn't been wiped away. Behind the closet door, I found a dusty old box filled with paperwork. As soon as I opened it, my hands froze. I found an old loan agreement, one I didn't recognize. It was from when I was just 16, a loan of $8,000 taken out in my name. The signature was mine, but the handwriting didn't match. It was my mother's. I sat down on the floor, the box still in my lap. The realization hit me like a freight train. I had been used. My name, my future, had been nothing but collateral for their debts. They had taken advantage of me from the moment I could sign my name. I knew I needed to see Pastor Hill. He was a man who had always stood by my family, the one who preached about love, about sacrifice, about family. But as I walked into that old church, it felt like I was walking into a lie. Pastor Hill greeted me with his usual warmth, but I could see the tension in his eyes. He spoke about my mother's sacrifices for the family, about how much she needed me, about how I should return to them and mend the broken bond. It felt rehearsed, like a script he had been handed and had memorized over the years. As I stood there listening to him, I realized that the church was no different from the rest of my life. It was built on falsehoods. I had contributed money to that church through my mother, money that I had never questioned. But now I couldn't help but wonder, had my mother been using the church just like she had been using me? When I left the church, I felt like I was walking away from everything. The town, the people, the lies. I swore to myself that I wouldn't let them control me anymore. I was going to expose everything. No one would be able to spin their story for me ever again. Returning to Portland felt like stepping into a new life. I spent the entire evening sorting through the documents I had found in Salem, piecing together a timeline of my life and the way my family had used me for their own gain. The more I looked, the more I realized how deep the manipulation ran. It wasn't just the money. It was the years of emotional manipulation, the constant guilt they had made me carry, all for their convenience. As I sat there staring at the stacks of paperwork, old receipts, loan agreements, bills, it was like I was seeing my life laid out in front of me. I had been their silent caretaker, their financial backer, the one who kept them afloat while they lived their lives as though nothing was wrong. But now everything was coming into focus. I wasn't just an innocent bystander. I was a victim of a system. They had built a system where my worth was tied to what I could give. I called Maxime Ortiz that night. I needed to meet him. I needed someone to help me make sense of all this. He agreed to meet me the next morning at his office. When I arrived, Maxime immediately took me seriously. He had always been the one person who understood the gravity of what I was going through. I showed him everything: the loan from when I was 16, the $60,000 transfer I had never authorized, and all the other payments I had made without question. Maxime looked at the papers and nodded gravely. "This isn't just family business anymore," he said. "This is fraud, and you have every right to take action." I felt a surge of relief. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. Maxime had always been there, but now I knew we were going to do something about this. We were going to fight back. As we went through the documents, Maxime found something else: a mortgage under my name taken out to cover the cost of repairs for the church in Salem. The paperwork was signed by me, but the contact email was my mother's. The realization hit me like a punch in the gut. My family had been using my name to secure loans, to fix their mistakes, and to build a life off of me. They hadn't just stolen from me, they had stolen my future. I needed answers. I couldn't let this go. So I did something I had never done before. I called my mother. When she picked up, I asked her about the $60,000 transfer. I wanted to know why I wasn't informed about it, why my signature was on documents I had never seen before. Her response was immediate and defensive. She tried to change the subject, accusing me of not understanding how hard things had been for them. She said I should be grateful for everything they had done for me. The more I listened, the more I recognized the manipulation in her words. This wasn't about family, this was about control. I ended the call with a cold finality. The lies were too much to bear. That night, Riley sent me a text. "You don't know the full story. Stay out of this." It was a message filled with fear, not anger. Riley knew something, but she was too scared to tell me. I didn't know what she was hiding, but I knew I wasn't going to stop until I found out. I made a decision right then. I wasn't just going to get my money back. I was going to expose everything. I was going to make them face the truth, no more hiding behind lies, no more playing the hero in a story that wasn't even mine. I started working on a legal case with Maxime, preparing to go after them, not just for the money they owed, but for the years they had stolen from me. They wouldn't get away with this, and I wasn't going to let them dictate the narrative any longer. I drove to Harlan Pierce's house for the second time, a nagging sense of dread crawling up my spine. Harlan had been a fixture in my life, a quiet man who had seen more than I'd ever realized. I knew he had a piece of the puzzle I was missing, a key to understanding how deep the web of lies had stretched. This time he wasn't hesitant. He'd prepared something for me, a box of old documents he hadn't shown me before. When I opened the box, the reality of what I was seeing hit me hard. There were documents from the past, ones that tied me directly to deals I never agreed to. The first thing I saw was a home repair contract that had my name on it, but the price was double what it should have been. My mother, Lydia, had used my name to get extra funds from a contractor. The worst part, she had been reimbursed by the contractor, pocketing money that wasn't hers. I couldn't believe it. My own mother had used me to profit off repairs for the house she insisted was for the family. Harlan sat across from me, his face grim. "Your mom, she took care of it all, didn't she?" he asked, looking down at the papers. I nodded, trying to keep my composure. "What else do you know, Harlan?" I needed to know everything. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat before speaking, his voice low. "She used your name for more than just repairs. You were her backup plan, Cassian. You were the one she could always count on to bail her out when things got tough." That's when it hit me. My entire life had been built around the idea that I was the one to fix things for everyone. I was never meant to be a person with my own needs. I had been a tool, a resource to keep the family's facade intact. But that wasn't all Harlan had to tell me. "I had a conversation with your mother years ago." Harlan continued, his tone heavy with regret. "She told me he owes us his life. Don't worry about it." The words cut through me like a blade. Not only had I been financially drained, but my role in the family had been reduced to that of a financial asset. My mother had seen me as nothing more than a means to an end. I recorded Harlan's story on my phone, making sure to capture every word, every detail. It was the first piece of solid evidence I had from someone outside of my family. Harlan didn't know it yet, but his words were going to be the key to everything. As I walked back to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I pulled out my phone and noticed I had a missed call. It was from Pastor Hill. I hesitated but answered. His voice, once full of warmth and authority, now sounded desperate. "Cassian, I need to speak with you. Your mother is... she's not handling this well. There are rumors going around that you're going to sue her. Please just come back to the family. She needs you." I felt a knot form in my stomach. Pastor Hill had always been a stabilizing figure in my life, someone I'd trusted. But now all I could hear in his voice was manipulation. "She's hurt Cassian," he continued. "She's done everything for you. Don't turn your back on your family now." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't about family, it was about keeping the cycle going. He was trying to guilt me into backing down, but I wasn't going to let him or my mother manipulate me anymore. "You don't understand, Pastor," I said, cutting him off. "This isn't about my family needing me. This is about them needing my money, and I'm done." I hung up before he could respond, my heart racing. I had to make them see. I had to expose everything. Just as I was about to start the engine, I received another text. This one was from Riley. "You don't know everything. Don't get involved," it said. The message was brief, but the implication was clear. Riley knew more than she was letting on. She was scared, and it wasn't just the money that was keeping her silent. My sister was tangled in this web, and I knew I couldn't leave her in the dark, even if she was too scared to tell me the truth. I didn't respond to her. I didn't know how to fix what was broken between us, but I had a job to do. It was time to take the next step. I drove straight to Maxime's office. As soon as I sat down, Maxime looked at me with an intensity I hadn't seen before. "I found something," he said, his voice serious. I waited, my heart pounding. "What did you find?" Maxime handed me a folder. It was full of bank statements, wire transfers, and details about an account I didn't recognize. It wasn't just any account, it was a transaction trail leading to a mysterious account in Santa Cruz. Your family's been funneling money into this account for years, Cassian, and it all leads back to a property in Santa Cruz. I think everything you've been told about that vacation is a lie. I didn't need to hear more. I knew where I had to go next. The truth I had been searching for was in Santa Cruz, and I was going to find it. Santa Cruz was a stark contrast to Portland. The sun was harsh, the air dry, the sky so clear it almost felt too open, too exposed. It felt like a different world, a place where secrets could be buried just beneath the surface, out of reach but never truly gone. Maxime had sent me the address of a house my family had rented years ago during the trip they had claimed was a short vacation. As I stood in front of it, something didn't sit right. The house looked far too permanent, too settled for what I'd been told. It wasn't a vacation spot. It was a place they had lived in for months. I walked inside and the feeling of dread only intensified. There was an eerie stillness in the air. The house seemed to be frozen in time, a relic of a life I was no longer part of. I began to search the rooms, my mind racing. Then I found it my old bedroom. But it wasn't mine anymore. The walls, once filled with memories of late-night talks and laughter, were bare. Empty. I opened the closet and found a small notebook tucked behind some old clothes. It was Riley's handwriting. The note inside read, "If you find out about this, everything will fall apart." My heart sank. Riley had been keeping secrets from me. She knew more about what had happened, but she had kept quiet. She was as trapped in this as I was, if not more. I continued searching the house, feeling like I was unearthing the last traces of the family I had known. And then I found it, a contract. It was a kitchen renovation contract that had been sent to the landlord to cover the cost of repairs. Once again, my signature was on the paperwork, but it wasn't my handwriting. It was my mother's. The pieces were starting to fall into place. Not only had my family used me to secure loans and pay bills, but they had used my name for repairs they didn't even tell me about. I wasn't just the silent investor. I was the puppet they pulled on strings my life spent paying off their debts. But the worst was yet to come. As I was going through the paperwork, my phone buzzed with a call from a law office in Santa Cruz. "They're updating the estate records for your grandfather's inheritance," the voice on the other end said. "There's been a change to the beneficiary list. It seems someone altered the will." My blood ran cold. "Who changed it?" I asked. "The new beneficiary is Riley." The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. My mother had changed the will to cut me out entirely, transferring everything to Riley. I stood there in the silence of that house, the weight of everything crashing down on me. The trip to Santa Cruz hadn't been a simple vacation. It had been the beginning of my mother's attempt to erase me from the family's assets, to take everything I had worked for and give it to Riley. I knew then that I had to return to Portland, that I couldn't waste another second. This battle wasn't over yet. I was going to face my family, and I was going to make sure they couldn't hide behind their lies any longer. I returned to Portland, the weight of the decision pressing down on me like never before. The city felt colder this time, the streets more impersonal. It was a place I had once called home, but now it felt like a distant memory, a past life. I had made my choice, there was no turning back. Sitting at my desk in the apartment, I opened the files that had been the catalyst for everything. The screen illuminated the room, casting a sharp glow over the stacks of paperwork. Every number, every piece of evidence I had meticulously gathered over the past few weeks was now laid out in front of me. It wasn't just a fight for money anymore. It was a battle for my life, for the person I had become in the shadow of my family's lies. I wasn't the child they could control anymore. I knew exactly what I had to do next. I called Maxime. "Everything's in place," Maxime said when he answered. "The documents are ready. We can file the suit as soon as you're ready." His words were reassuring, but I knew this wasn't just about legal action anymore. It was about confronting my past, confronting the people who had shaped it. I wasn't just going to win this fight. I was going to expose them all for who they really were. "I'm ready," I said. "But before I file, there's one thing I have to do." Maxime paused. "What's that?" "I have to face them," I replied. I have to confront my mother and Riley before I go any further. Maxime didn't argue. He understood. That evening, I prepared for the hardest conversation I would ever have. I wasn't sure what would happen when I saw them, but I knew I couldn't move forward without it. I had spent so many years living for them, doing what I thought was right for everyone. Now it was time to face the truth. Lydia arrived first. She entered the apartment with a false sense of calm, her usual smile on her face, as though everything was normal. But I could see the anxiety in her eyes. She sat down across from me, trying to make small talk, but I didn't engage. I had no desire to pretend anymore. I don't understand why you're doing this. Cassie Lydia started, her voice strained. We've always been a family. Everything I've done has been for you. For us. I stared at her, feeling the words burn in my throat. You've done nothing for me, Mom. You've used me. You've used my name, my future, to get everything you wanted. I slid the stack of papers across the table, documents, contracts, proof of the money she had stolen from me. Her face faltered, but she quickly recovered. That's not how it was supposed to be. You don't understand the pressure we were under. I leaned forward, my voice low but firm. No, Mom. I understand perfectly. You manipulated me. And I'm done. Before Lydia could respond, Riley walked in. Her eyes briefly flashed with surprise when she saw the papers on the table, but she quickly regained her composure. She glanced at Lydia, then at me, her face unreadable. I couldn't look at her. Not now. Not when I knew the truth. Riley had been a part of this, whether she admitted it or not. I had spent so many years protecting her, keeping her safe, but now I realized she had known everything all along. Riley spoke first, her voice cutting through the silence. You don't get it, Cassian. You're making a huge mistake. Mom was only trying to help the family. You're ruining everything. I felt my anger flare, but I held it in check. I had been prepared for this. I'm not the one ruining anything. You've been part of this lie just as much as she has. You've known what was going on, Riley, and you've done nothing but protect Mom. You're just as guilty. Riley's face twisted with something between frustration and fear. You don't understand. You don't know what it's like to be stuck in the middle of this. I didn't have a choice. I shook my head, the disappointment cutting through me. You always had a choice. You just didn't want to make it. The room was tense, the air thick with unspoken words. Just as I thought it was over, my phone rang. It was Pastor Hill. I answered reluctantly. Cassian, his voice crackled with urgency. Your mother is really struggling with this. She needs you, son. You can't just walk away from your family like this. Please don't do something you'll regret. I paused, letting his words sink in. He was trying to pull me back into the web they had spun, trying to make me feel guilty for wanting to break free. I've already made my decision, I said quietly. I'm not going back. I hung up without waiting for a response. There was no going back now. I turned to Maxime's number. I sent him a text. It's done. I'm ready. The battle was no longer about just the money. It was about me taking back control of my life. It was about finally standing up to the family that had defined me for so long. The legal battle officially began. Maxime filed the lawsuit demanding restitution for every penny I had ever spent on my family over the years. I could feel the anticipation building as the case moved forward, but at the same time, a sense of dread weighed on me. This was just the beginning. I knew they wouldn't give up without a fight. A week after the case was filed, I received an unexpected email from Harlan Pierce, the landlord from Salem. He had been in touch with me once before, but this time the message was different. Attached was a copy of my grandfather's will, and what I read in that document shook me to my core. It wasn't just the money they had taken from me. It was the inheritance. My grandfather had left everything to me. But I had never been told. In fact, my name had been replaced in the will by Riley. My mother had orchestrated this entire thing, not only draining me financially, but cutting me out of my own inheritance. She had manipulated everything, including my future. I called her immediately, my heart pounding. I know about the will, Mom, I said. I know what you did. For the first time, there was silence on the other end. "You don't understand," Lydia replied, her voice hollow. "Everything I did for the family. You have to trust me." "No," I said, cutting her off. "I don't trust you anymore." Riley's voice came through in the background. "Cassian, please just stop. You don't know what you're doing." But the truth had already been laid bare. I looked at myself in the mirror that night and I saw someone I barely recognized. I wasn't the person my family had tried to mold me into. I wasn't their savior anymore. The next day I confronted Riley. She broke down, finally admitting that she had been manipulated by our mother all these years. "I had no choice," she whispered. I didn't know what else to do. I could see the fear in her eyes, and for the first time in a long while I felt pity. She had been caught in this web too, just as I had. But she had made her choice, and now I had to make mine. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was just free. I filed the final documents, and the case moved forward. The court froze my family's assets, and I finally felt like I was taking back control of my life. I didn't care about the money. I didn't care about the revenge. What mattered was that I could finally walk away from the life they had defined for me and live on my own terms. Portland had been my home, but I wasn't running from it anymore. I was running toward something better, toward the life I deserved. The moment I walked out of that court, the weight I had carried for so many years seemed to vanish. I was no longer the person my family had wanted me to be. I was finally myself. And that was the only victory I needed. As I stood outside the courthouse, a strange calm washed over me. The weight of the decision had been overwhelming, but now in the silence that followed there was only peace. I had finally taken control of my life. For the first time in years, I wasn't living for anyone else. I wasn't making decisions based on guilt, fear, or obligation. I was living for myself. I had spent so much of my life carrying the weight of my family's mistakes, trying to fix their problems and constantly trying to be the hero. But as I looked at the path ahead, I realized that I no longer needed to be the one to carry the load. I had finally let go of the expectations they had placed on me, and for the first time I was free. It wasn't an easy decision. The guilt, the shame, and the anger still lingered. But I realized that holding on to those feelings only kept me tied to the past that had defined me for far too long. I wasn't the person they tried to mold me into. I was someone else now. Someone stronger, someone who had learned to walk away from toxic relationships and start fresh. Walking away from my family wasn't about cutting them off forever. It wasn't about revenge or anger, it was about choosing myself. It was about realizing that I didn't need to sacrifice my happiness to keep them comfortable. They had been using me, taking from me without ever truly seeing me. And I had allowed it for far too long. But not anymore. As I moved forward, I knew it wasn't going to be easy. There would be moments of doubt, moments when I questioned whether I made the right choice. But I also knew I couldn't go back. I couldn't go back to being someone who was trapped in the cycle of guilt and manipulation. I had to keep moving forward, no matter how difficult it was. If you're reading this and you feel like you're in a similar situation, feeling stuck, feeling like you have to keep giving to people who don't appreciate you, please know that you don't have to keep living this way. You are not defined by the people who take advantage of your kindness. You are not defined by the expectations others place on you. You are worthy of happiness, of peace, and of living a life that is true to yourself. I hope my story helps you see that it's possible to take back control. It's possible to walk away from the things that hold you back, even if it feels impossible. You don't need permission to live your life the way you want to. You don't need to sacrifice your well-being for the sake of others. If you're ready to take the first step, start small. Set boundaries. Say no when you need to. Take time for yourself. You don't have to fix everything for everyone else. You just need to focus on fixing yourself. You deserve to live a life that is yours, free from guilt and manipulation. Thank you for reading. And if you feel like you can relate, if this story resonates with you, I'd love to hear from you. Let me know you're listening or share your own experiences in the comments. I'm here and I'm not alone. Neither are you. Let's take this journey together. Let's walk toward a life where we are in control, where we are free. Thank you.